Welcome to the Cerebral Palsy Perspective, an optimistic look at life, movement, and doing hard things our way. I'm Chad Williams, and I'm here with my co-host, Daryl Perry.
It's the second episode, Chad. It's getting real, man. We're building momentum now.
Yeah, it's going to be a good one, I think. We've talked a bit offline about some of the things that we've had to work through with CP in the 80s and 90s. And, at that time, we didn't know any different. But as we kind of form this podcast and build around it, I think it would be interesting to look at some of that compared to how things are now and some of the things that have sort of shaped us a little bit. I think it'd be a good conversation to have.
Yeah, and when you brought this up, the 90s get a lot of love now because there's a lot of nostalgia, but it's not just Space Jam and Zubaz pants and starter jackets. Life for a kid with a disability was much different because even the internet wasn't like it is now. You and I both kind of grew up not really knowing too many other people like us. The interactions, we'll say, were a lot different now than what you've seen as far as how kids are treated and adults are treated too. So yeah, it's night and day, and we got some stories, and we're going to share.
Yeah, that's kind of what kicked it off. I have most people might know, but for those that don't, I have two kids, and we were sitting around with my son, and somehow we got talking about some of stories from childhood. And I told a particular story, and my son was blown away that it could even happen like that because he has seen so much more inclusion and acceptance, and he couldn't believe that it was like it was. But the particular story I was talking about, I used to walk to school. By the time I was in fifth grade, I was able to walk to school, and I would get to school a little early. And usually there's kids playing football, and, they usually didn't ask me to play, which is fine. But on this one particular day, they needed an extra guy. So they asked me to play. So I'm, happy to jump in and play football. So we played football all morning before school, and then class starts and we all get called to the office, and we're like wondering why we're getting called to the principal's office. And it turns out we got called down there. And in front of me, all these kids got yelled at for asking me to join them in a game of football. And the principal told them that I was a liability and that I should not be playing football with them. And they're not to ask me going forward. In front of me, no less. That's I'm 43, and was in fifth grade. That story's kind of hung with me this whole time. And so I don't know how we got to tell that story, but it's true, though, to think about that possibly happening today. I couldn't imagine the ramifications. I know nothing happened back then. It was just like, all right, that's what it is. But a bunch of the kids that I went to school with, they're friends. We're still friends on social media, and we've mentioned it back and forth in chats. They still remember because it was, even for them, such a wild experience.
Do you remember how you felt? Because and there are plenty of these instances, especially when it's somebody like a principal that was an authority figure.
Yeah, an authority, right?
Yeah,
terrible.
You just you probably were trying to piece it together. Wait a minute, what just happened? What are we doing? It clearly stuck with you too, and
you're doing everything you can to fit in, and not feel different. And then you have people like that doing the opposite. How can you try to feel the same when you have something like that happen? And it's crazy because at the high school where my son goes, they have a unified basketball team, and he helped out on the unified team. And so we went to some of the games, and it's just incredible. It's a whole basketball league through the school where everybody that plays, they're on some sort of spectrum of disability. And yet you have the softball team and the football team and the whole school comes out to cheer these kids on while they play basketball. And it's such a refreshing thing to see. Like, it was emotional to watch a couple times. I'm like, wow, what an amazing thing for these kids. And I don't want to say that my whole elementary school experience wasn't terrible. I have unfortunately a handful of stories like that, but I don't want to paint it like it was all terrible. I did have, great friends and a good support system, but at the same time, there wasn't anything like there is today with its unified basketball and so much of the inclusion and acceptance that you see today. It's so different.
It is so different, but I am glad that you brought it up, like saying that you don't want to say that your entire experience growing up was bad, because I felt much the same way when we were talking about this. When I was thinking back to the experiences I had, I also have a list of experiences that are like, wait a minute, that would never fly today.
Yeah.
But I did also I had some teachers were supportive and encouraging. And it's actually the flip side of what you're describing with the principal, is like the just a little bit of encouragement can go a long way. Just like one offhand comment can stick with somebody for such a long time. But I think with what they're trying to do now, and it's fascinating with kids, because I remember when my son, when somebody first, we knew this was going to happen, mentioned to him that, oh, your parents are like, what's wrong with your parents? And he literally looked at him like, they just like, those are my parents. Like, you don't know any different. You're not less than. It's just part of who you are and what you do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting how the support that's cultivated or not can really drive kids throughout life. So it's good to see what they're doing now. I do feel like a lot of us in our age, specifically, we just tried to figure it out as best we could. As time has gone on, we started to connect with people. I told you that, like, before we started recording today. I love when you and I can talk about this, because for those of you listening, if you're not familiar in the CP community, there is what's called mild CP, which is like a little umbrella. I don't know that it's really a technical term. You guys aren't coming here for medical advice. We know that. So we're not going to try to sound medical. But, it's just refreshing when you and I talk about life experiences, because while there's so many nuanced things that are different, there's also a lot of similarities. And that's comforting too, because again, one of the worst things when somebody is saying something like that principle, like, you already feel isolated and alone. Now you feel like a liability. Like,
yeah,
what is actually going on? Like, that's the, that it's wild. But yes, it's night and day. We used to deal with a lot of crazy stuff like this.
Yeah. And it also, after we were telling that story and, we had some of our conversation offline, I started to think about some of the other differences, and I was immediately reminded of my orthopedic shoes. And back then they came in either black or brown. It was two choices, black or brown dress shoes. And mine had like a thicker sole on the one side to incorporate the leg difference, to sort of balance out the leg length.
Yeah.
And they were quickly termed my Frankenstein shoes by classmates, but that's a whole nother story. But now, there's AFO and there's so many different things available that I'm reminded of that too. You can actually get a pair of sneakers versus like either a black or brown dress shoe, and now there's all these amazing devices that I see that weren't a thing, when I was trying to navigate this. And even the surgery that I had, I talked to some people now and they're like, not they do it a whole different way today, but like my foot turned all the way in, and to fix it, they like broke my foot and then reset it with pins. And I've even seen like new techniques. I recently saw this casting technique where they like move the foot a little bit at a time, like through like they place a cast on it, leave the cast on for a couple weeks, and then like continue to move it, this casting technique. And it's interesting even to see the improvements there and the differences there. But
it's funny to realize that we grew up in the Stone Age and we still feel that we're very young. So that's always a weird thing to think about, but it's true. But like, when you talk about shoes now, and I think the conversation around athletics, being active while you're an adult with CP, what's some of the stuff when you talk about shoes now? Were you fitted for shoes? Have you tried out different ones? Like, what do you with running and training? What types of shoes are you?
Well, now I have the custom orthotics. I have custom inserts, which is nice. And now I just have to pay attention to like the heel drop of the shoe, the depth of the sole. So I can go to a place like Fleet Feet and I can bring my orthotics with me, and I can say like, I need a shoe with this much heel depth and I need this orthotic to fit in the shoe. And I can have like my pick of a whole bunch of shoes. Like my running shoe feels incredible. I had to, trial and error through a couple different running shoes, but the shoe that I use now, my orthotic fits in perfect. It gives me the right depth with everything, and I'm able to run. But like back then, what was I going to do? Like run in my dress shoes? There were no other shoes. It was the black or brown dress shoe. So it's nice to be able to use that. And then of course I have my hip brace and things like that. So there's a lot of adaptive equipment now that makes it a lot easier to be active.
So I haven't been into bracing in years. I know the materials have gotten a lot different. I know there's devices and adaptive bracing for just about everything. I'm really curious to see where this stuff goes as we age. And I think my biggest thing, because I've said I spend a lot of time now in the CP focused Facebook groups just to kind of see other people's experiences. And you'll see a lot of people that are active. And I swear, I feel like they did what I tried to do for the first 40 years of my life, where it's like, I'm not going to let CP hold me down. I'm going to will myself through it. And then through some gnarly injuries that I kept having to deal with, I'm like, I can't continue to do this. My body's going to give out. But I feel like a lot of people were active and they're like, I'm going to have control of this in this one area of my life, and their body gives out. I'm really focused on being able to do the stuff that I'm doing like decades from now. So and with where technology and everything's going, I mean, I know very little about stem cell, but what I know about what happened to me around birth, I'm very interested in seeing what that ends up being as we age and as we go through life.
Yeah, I hope they continue to make improvements, because it's a double-sided thing. Like when I don't exercise, when I don't run, things tighten up and I get stiff and I end up in pain.
Yeah.
And then when I used to try to run without some of the adaptive stuff that I have now, then I'd come and, then you're in pain for other reasons.
Yeah.
So you have to find the balance, but as we get older, it'll be harder, obviously, to find that balance. So hopefully they continue to make improvements so that we're able to continue to be active.
What's your relationship with stretching now versus when you were a kid?
It's been such a tough thing for me, because I obviously know how important it is.
Yeah.
But I had to go through it so much when I was a kid that I had this relation, like I hated it.
Yeah.
Because of what it meant for me back then. Like I had to miss out on all kinds of things. And besides that, it was painful. Like, see, physical therapy back then, now that I'm older and things are a little different, I wish I could find somebody like the physical therapist I had back then, because I would go to a physical therapy appointment and they would lay me down on the table and they would sit there and stretch me out for an hour, all these different ways.
Yes.
And it was painful. Like your eyes are watering the whole time and you're in pain for a bit when you leave, but then you feel great. But at the same time, I hated stretching. And then I'm older and I'm trying to continue to run.
Yeah.
And now that it's cold, like my back and my feet, I'm having issues. So I'm back to physical therapy. But physical therapy now is like, you go in on a table and there's 10 other people in there on 10 other tables, and they walk by and say, like, do 3 sets of 10 of this and I'll be back to check on you in a minute. And they go on to the next guy. And that's just not, you need somebody that can push you past your pain point when you're trying to stretch these extremely tight muscles. And so it's not as beneficial as it used to be when I was a kid. And I've asked around, and like you would think where I am located, there's some huge facilities here. It's a pretty big city. They don't offer it like what we used to get when we were a kid, which is kind of crazy.
So like they don't offer one-on-one therapy with like
not through physical therapy. I've been able to find some places that I can go to where I have to pay out of pocket. It's not considered physical therapy. It's like it's its own thing.
Yeah.
We talked a couple of weeks ago, I think, when my back first started bothering me and I was looking for somebody to stretch me out.
Yeah.
I had to go find like a private practice business where they do like one-on-one stretching, and it was great, but it's its own thing. You can't use your insurance. You got to pay out of pocket, which I can do, but it's also nice to be able to like use your insurance and go to physical therapy. And so I'm even now still trying to navigate that a little bit.
It's interesting because when I had these, I went to an orthopedic with the foot and ankle injuries I was having last year. And they're tied in with the physical therapy. So the orthopedic practice is not the same organization, but is adjacent to the hospital, and the hospital that has physical therapy. So I think they do a lot of referrals in between. And it happened to be, growing up, I don't even know how many physical therapists I had. I had one I saw when I was a little kid, that it was a private practice, and we would go to her house once a week, once every couple of weeks. I also had some that were in a rehab facility in a hospital also, that are much like what you're talking about, like would put you on the big bed and stretch you out. And it was like physical manipulation. Depending on the therapist, that was the amount of pressure and range of motion, and they would force this out of you, some of them. I remember this one, his name was Steve. Steve, you did a wonderful job, but you kicked my ass at 8 years old. Thank you. So like, I had these different experiences, and it just so happened that the orthopedic who I credit getting me introduced to exercise, because he wanted me to do to work out at a gym to, I say often, supplement my physical therapy or my stretching. It's the stretching I was supposed to be doing at home but wasn't doing. So he's kind of like, well, let's see if you lift weights. So he did that. But one of the therapists that was, I think she was still in school at the time, she's probably like 10 years older than us. She's still in practice. So she happened to be in the network of physical therapists that I could go see. But yeah, it's like you mentioned, you're like, you could totally pay out of pocket, but it's like a couple $100 a session. And depending on how often you're wanting to go,
Yeah.
I try to do stuff at home now. I fought that forever. Heather was actually the one to get me to do it because growing up in dance, she's stretching all the time. She's like, you need to stretch. You need to stretch. And I'm so like, if I don't want to do something, I'm so stubborn that if I don't do it first thing in the morning, I will not do it. That's why I work
Yeah.
out in the morning. My stretching literally has to be shut the alarm off, turn the watch on stretching mode, and like literally fall out of bed sometimes right into like this motion, this first stretch that I start with. I've got an entire flow. But like I hated it for the longest time because of the experience I had as a kid. And then I just was like, do you want to feel better or do you want to feel like a pretzel? And eventually I decided I wanted to feel better, but it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to get better with it, especially right now as I'm working through some stuff, but
yeah,
it's a hard thing.
And it's a very personal thing too, because I remember when I started to get involved in the CP community, there was she's Caitlin Kittles.
Yeah.
She's like telling me all the things she's doing with like bracing, and she's like, you got to do this, you got to do this, and she's like, this is what I do every day. And I'm like, I wasn't drinking enough water, I wasn't stretching, I wasn't going for any of these orthopedic evaluations for any of this bracing, and I was like, I had to wear braces as a kid, I don't want to do it. She's just like, you have to do it. You have to do it. And I'm sitting here like, you're right, but I still wasn't ready to do it at the time.
Yeah.
So, it's a very personal thing, and we all try to figure it out as best we can.
Yeah, but it's nice that there are more and more resources available. It's nice to be able to go online or go on social media, have somebody like Caitlin to talk to, because when I was younger, there were a couple other people in the town that I grew up in, that were disabled, but it was different. And it's not like my parents had resources. They didn't have people that they could turn to. And I had 3 other brothers that didn't have any issues. So, they had to lean on the doctors and things. But you and I, now we're able to go out to these groups or go on social media or lean on other people in the community. So it's nice that visibility is there now.
It is, and no pressure to you guys that are in the CP community, because some of you know you're coming on here with us. The rest of you, we're going to get you on. So that's actually one thing that I really think for both people that have CP, but also for the parents of kids with CP and other disabilities. That's been kind of the interesting thing for me, that maybe at first I didn't necessarily see how much benefit we would mean for them, but it makes total sense when you're a couple of adults that are actually living life with this. Big news flash, guys, we actually live lives with a disability. It's crazy. But like it shows them what a possible future could look like, which is really cool. But yeah, I mean, being able to connect and my parents, it was much the same way. Like my mom would take me to all my appointments. She advocated for everything. My dad switched jobs to get better insurance when I was probably like 4 years old to cover as much of the stuff. But yeah, it's so much better now. But I guess I think for us, I think we can appreciate it a little bit differently. I guess because we know where we came from. I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't start sharing my story until it was only a couple of years ago. And that was probably the greatest thing that came from it, is like, I started to share my story on social media, and it would be parents reaching out to say like, wait a second, you're able to do these things. Like, I hope my son can do that someday. And now they follow me, and I've had them, message me and ask questions, send me messages to ask if we can chat, or sending me pictures of their kids. And I think that's what really brought me to lean forward into it, is to, be that resource for others. And so it's nice to be able to do that. But I also like to be able to do the same, see what other people in the community are doing. That's, I've found your journey and started following you. And so it's nice that we're able to do the same, but I'm glad that I can be here for others as well.
It ends up coming full circle. And it's really interesting to see what everybody is doing and how, and the nice thing is like, I think you get to a point, there's a whole nother side of this is like everything on the internet. There's a whole nother side of CP and disability where people are very angry and bitter about the positions that certain people have. And that's not the part of what any of us play into, because it's like everybody's story is unique and everybody is living their life, spreading their message, doing their thing. And I think the biggest opportunity of anybody, like, and again, there are plenty of times in my life, I don't want to be the poster person for cerebral palsy, but I've for a long time been aware that if somebody does say something to me, especially if it comes out of a place of curiosity, and this is kids or adults, I've heard people say, well, if it's a kid, it's one thing. If it's an adult, there's adults that probably haven't come into contact with anybody like you either. Like you do have an opportunity to change somebody's perception of what CP is or what a disability, like what somebody with a disability is like. And yes, there's going to be times that you're frustrated by it. But I mean, I think if you can look at this thing that we grew up with despising, like we had this mark on us, like, oh, I wish I didn't have it. I wish I didn't have it. And I totally understand it. But if you can find some benefit to your life with CP, and I think spreading the message and talking to people, I think it makes life much, much easier. Again, we're not taking away from any of the day-to-day struggles that anyone, including us, have, but it's all in how you look at it. Like, that's life, I think.
Yeah. Well, I know that I have people will often like tell me like you have a level of persistence that like I haven't seen before. Well, I had to develop that a long time ago.
Yeah.
Just to get through some of this stuff that we're talking about, trying to play football in 5th grade and being told you're a liability. Well, you'll learn some things pretty quick. And so I think that's, if I could find a positive, I'm persistent. When I decide I'm going to do something, I go all in. And I think part of that is just the different things that I've had to work through to get to this point.
I think that's one thing about people, definitely people with CP, is you find a way. You find a way to make it happen. You do it, hard things your way, right? Right. But I mean, that's the thing. And you look at this in life, you look at this in all areas of life. It's the people that don't quit that get to wherever it is that they're going to end up being. Like, yes, I think one of the best feelings is at the end of the day where you've pushed yourself too much physically, not when you're injured. You know the difference when you're injured and you're not, but you've pushed yourself physically and you're like, I can't even move. I feel like I literally might have broke my body today. And then you wake up the next morning and you're sore, you're stiff, you got to stretch, you might be a pretzel, but you get to do it again.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I have said before, it's like I was born into a situation where my parents had a similar birth to me a year before I was born. That child lived 3 days. I am still here. I was born 3 months premature, same scenario. So like I was aware at a younger age that this was a bonus. Like the fact that I get to do and I've told you, like there's certain things, because a lot of times with CP, speech isn't impacted. My speech is not impacted. Okay, I'm going to figure out how to communicate. you know, I've heard, well, if I looked like you, people would listen to me. I'm going to take that as a compliment. Thank you, sir. But, you know, like you take what you have and I know you get those comments from people too. It's funny. It's like, hey, you know, handsome
Yeah.
guys with CP. There you go.
Yeah. No, I think this was a good conversation to sort of, you know, a good base for the podcast going forward, and hopefully, you know, people will find some value from this and continue to tune in. And like you said, we'll be reaching out to some of those other people on social media.
Yeah, we've got a lot of stuff that we can talk to amongst ourselves. We've got other people that'll come on and share their perspectives, and we even have this set up to where we can have more or less a roundtable format. So yeah, we've got a lot of really good stuff for you guys. Make sure that you check out our links in the show notes. Keep up with everything that we're doing, and we'll be back next week.